Welcome, my fellow nerds, back to Nerd In for another episode of Totally Bored. I am Christian, and I'll be your host for the evening. And well, tonight, we've got some important stuff to talk about. Let's get into it. So as you all know, it is currently the midst of FOMO season. That's right, all of the Kickstarters are going live. We've got things on the horizon like Knitting Circle, Layers by Kids Table Board Games, A Place for All My Books, and all of these other awesome, great games and even accessories that are launched on Kickstarter all the time, and all of these crowdfunding sources. The big question is, should you be investing in them? This is a multi-layered and very stacked question, and we're going to answer that today by going through some games. This is a stack of a good chunk, but not all of my Kickstarter-related games. So, the ones I've brought today, we have, as you can see on top, Kelp, Mycelium, Ostia, The Fox Experiment, and then down at the bottom we have Maple Valley and Creature Comforts. These are all games that were done through crowdfunding, primarily Kickstarter, and they're all fantastic games. So this is gonna kind of lead you towards the answer of, yes, I should back crowdfunding games. They're excellent. That is usually true, but it's not always true. These games aren't always going to be for you. So the big things that I'm going to pose to you today are, well, is the game really for you? And that's one of the hardest things to tell with a Kickstarter campaign, because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have the game in your hands. If you go to conventions, there are occasional times where you can play test some of these before those projects go live and be able to get an experience with a prototype copy. Or if you're one of the lucky few, you're in the content creator space and you get to test prototypes, or you sign up to test prototypes for these different companies, you'll get chances to play them before buying them. But for the average person, that's not really a normal thing, so you're just kind of hedging your bets on whether or not the game is going to be good for you. Now, something like Kelp. This is a game that I backed with a very educated decision. I saw a lot of people talking about this. There were a lot of different creators that were playtesting it and doing reviews on it. And there was enough to be able to look at, there was enough hype around this game to be able to research on it to actually determine whether or not I liked it. So that really helped. This fell under every guideline that I had in my tips on saving money in board games video. If you haven't seen that yet, you can check it in the info card up here to be able to save yourself some money in the board gaming hobby. Like I said, this met every single one of those criteria. I did a ton of research into this. I knew it was going to be a game that I would enjoy. So I ended up backing it, and then I had to wait. It was like 8-9 months, something like that. My timeline might be a little bit off on that, but I had to wait for a good chunk of time before I was able to get this game in my hands. In that time, I could have gotten into other games and had stuff already on my table. Was the Kickstarter or the crowdfunding worth it in this case? Yes, this one I would say was definitely worth it. Now, on the other hand, a game that I didn't crowdfund, Mycelium, I actually just got this. This is a Grail game that I've been hunting for and was about to give up hope on until literally that last gleam of light came through and I found a copy. Would I have backed this on Kickstarter at the time? Probably. If I was around at the time that this crowdfunding came up, I probably would have backed this. Now, would I have been as excited about it had I crowdfunded it and had to wait all that time for it to show up? I honestly don't think that I would have been. The fact that I was able to pick this up after market and get it in my hands a lot quicker, I think really did a lot for this game. Because, I mean, it's a good time. Do I think it would have been crowdfunding worthy? Maybe not. I don't know if I would have been as happy waiting for so long to get Mycelium that it would have been a little bit more tragic. Now, on the other hand, we can look at something like Ostia, which is another game that I backed. They did a rerun of this on Kickstarter to also sell the Pirates expansion, which I also picked up. The consensus for this one is there was not a lot of research to do on Ostia. I kind of just took a gamble on this one. The only thing I knew about it going in really was that it was a Moncala action selection system, and that was what pulled me into it. So I took a gamble on this and I pulled the trigger. Should I have? in hindsight, I definitely shouldn't have done it. I got very lucky that I ended up with a game that I really enjoyed, but going in, I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know anything about the developers, the producers, anything. I knew nothing about Ostia going in, and I ended up landing with a game that's in my top 10 list that's probably going to be there for a while now. But, you know, if there had been more research on it, and if I had been more, or if the same research had been there and I had been more strict on my purchasing guidelines by the time that I got it, I wouldn't have picked it up. I would have waited until there was an opportunity in stock, or, you know, till more people had covered the game. I would not have been as gung-ho about it. Again, I got very lucky with that one. Now, the other three that I have here, the Fox Experiment, Maple Valley, and Creature Comforts, all very fantastic games that I love, but they were all in my early stages of getting into board games when I was buying stuff for theme. I wanted cozy games. The Fox Experiment, I love foxes, so that seemed like a no-brainer for me. But again, these are all games I got very lucky on because I didn't do research into them at all. I saw the Fox Experiment at my local game store, and I said, I gotta have it, bought it, and I love it, but I've only played it a handful of times, and it kind of sits on my shelf. I mean, I have it in my S tier currently, but I just don't get it to the table as much. And this is the one exception on like a roll and write game that I have in my collection. But again, if I had been making informed decisions about these games, I don't think I would have gotten them. Maple Valley might be the one exception because this game is just wonderful. If I had looked into this one, I can tell without a doubt I would have bought it hands down. But Creature Comforts is the one I have a little bit less love for, as I'm not much of a dice chucking fan, and that's kind of what this is. It's a little bit of a push your luck worker placement, and by no means is it a bad game, but I don't table it a lot because it's just not really my style of game. I love the theme, I love the artwork, I love everything else about it. I'm just not a huge fan of the whole dice part of it, and I still play it, I still like it. Is it something I should have put my money into? Maybe not. But again, these are all games that I got after Kickstarter, after they were already out for retail and people had been able to get their hands on them and explore them. So the thing that I'm going to implore on you today is that Kickstarter or that crowdfunding game really going to be worth waiting all of that time for, building up all of this anticipation and all of this hype around the game, only to end up worrying about actually getting it and being disappointed when you play it, or not even playing it at all? I mean, I've gotten lucky with the games that I've backed in, that I have played them, and currently I'm backing 3 different games on Kickstarter right now, all of which I'm very excited for, but who knows, maybe I'll get them and then I won't like them. The nice part about the games that I backed is that they're by developers that I know I like, by designers that I know I enjoy and put out good products, but at the same time, it's a gamble. It's just a risk. So the ultimate thing that you have to weigh out on your own is the gamble worth it? Is the chance of me losing out and getting a game I might not like worth it for what I could have been putting that money towards a game that I know I would like instead? Like, not a lot of these are cheap. The Ostia Pirates expansion, I think, in total was about $100 for me, and I waited even longer than I did for Kelp. In that time, I could have gotten even a couple of games that I knew I would enjoy by then, and I would have already been playing them and enjoying them, but instead I held out and I waited for this game. I don't regret it. I got lucky. I took a gamble and it turned out to work for me, and that was a great experience. But that's the biggest thing you have to weigh for yourself is the cost of that game and the time you're going to have to wait for it worth the risk, the chance that you might not end up liking that game because you don't know enough about it. Now, again, there are exceptions. The games that are really hyped, that the developers send out a lot of prototypes for different people to explore and get their opinions on, those are the games that I recommend looking at the most. But it's so hard to not get caught up in the FOMO of it all that it really becomes a difficult time trying to navigate through what is and isn't worth it. And the other thing with Kickstarters is a lot of these campaigns have so many add-ons and bonus things to it And that's a whole other beast in itself to weigh is, am I going to like this game enough to have these extra add-ons? And when it comes to add-ons, a lot of the time I say wait on those. That is my general advice, is wait on add-ons unless they're absolutely necessary and you have sources that show that those add-ons are completely necessary. A lot of the times, if it's a cosmetic difference, those are things you can hold off on, because a lot of the time these developers are going to, once they release these games for actual retail, if they plan to do that, they're going to release those extra upgrade kits to be able to sell extra stuff. So if you get the game and you decide that those extra components will be nice, sure, you might have missed the opportunity to have them right away, but if you had to wait for a little bit, at least you still have the game to play and enjoy in the meantime, and you didn't have to worry about wasting that money on the upgraded components that you're not going to do anything with. So when it comes to component upgrades, I definitely say hold off on those until you know you're going to enjoy the game. And the other part I think that FOMO really is impacted by is that with these campaigns, there's a lot of stretch goals that are going to be met during these campaigns that add a lot of extra cool stuff to it. But to me, that falls into the same realm as cosmetics a lot of the time. Again, unless it really adds something to the game that is going to improve the experience of the game, it's just not quite as worth it. So that's something to honestly take out of consideration when you're looking at backing a game and deciding whether or not it's actually worth it for you to grab it. The crux of it all, again, is just that gambling aspect of it. That is essentially what you're doing when you're crowdfunding these games, is you're gambling on getting a good game. That is a decision that can only be made by you, the buyer. You are the one with the money. I don't know your wallets. I don't know your financial situation, nor do I want to. The decision is fully up to you. You need to weigh the difference of the cost versus the potential outcome and determine if the risks are good enough. If you're looking at a game and you're kind of on the fence about whether or not you might like it, at that point, just don't back it. If you're on the fence, even the slightest bit, don't back it. Just wait and see what happens and decide later on, because inevitably copies are going to float around somewhere, whether it's actually at retail at your local game store, or if it's at retail on the developers' websites, or even if you just find a third-hand copy on Board Game Market. That can save you just so much from having to stress about, is this going to be a game that I like, over all the time that I had to wait for it. And like I said, the Board Game Market is great. I got Mycelium off of that. I got Conservus off of that. Those are great resources to be able to check back in on games that, again, you were maybe on the fence on and didn't want to back right away. That gives you a chance to go back around, have time to analyze it, see if it's actually a game that you want, and then decide to get it, because there's a lot of people that do back these games and then end up not liking them. That's why, part of why the Board Game Market is there on BGG, is to be able to get rid of games that you don't like. So I definitely recommend keeping that as an open option, looking at Kickstarters and crowdfunds with an open mind, rather than getting sucked into the FOMO. If you get hit with that FOMO, just take a step back, put the device down, close the tab, whatever you're looking at it on. Stop looking at it for a minute and think about it. Just think about the game and be like, okay, I need to take myself out of the FOMO for a minute. I need to envision this at my table and decide if it's really worth it for me. And like I said, I'm backing 3 Kickstarters right now. I am taking that gamble. But the games that I'm backing, I have very high hopes, and I have weighed those costs and decided that I think they're going to be a great fit for my home. Even if not so much for myself, maybe they're more for my wife, or they're more for playing with my family. And I know that I will have a reason to play those games time and time again. So I backed them in the hopes that that does hold true and that my knowledge is as accurate as it seems. But I don't know for certain until I get that game in my hands. So that's all I got for this video today, guys. It was kind of more of a rant than anything, and I don't discourage Kickstarters at all. If you find games that you know you're gonna love and that you know are gonna get to your table and see some play, by all means, go for it if it's within your means and you're willing to wait. But just be careful about it. Keep an open mind, take yourself out of the FOMO, and try to analyze it from a proper perspective rather than, oh, there's a time limit on this. If I miss out, I'm going to regret it. Just try to take yourself out of that as much as you can. Back it for the right reasons, not for the FOMO. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. As always, we love having you here, and we hope you enjoy your stay, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.
In the jack, but we came up from the bottom. Through the cracks of the light pour in. Have a blast, got the drinks pour in. Take a risk like it's a short thing.